Good afternoon and welcome to all our ACCA members across the Middle East region. You all know me now. We've done a lot of webinars, especially since COVID-19 happened in lockdown. But for those of you who don't, Fazila Gopalani, Head of ACCA for the Middle East. I'm really excited about today's webinar because we've had a lot of technical webinars recently, IFRS 16, IFRS 9, etc. And this topic is a topic that's very close to my heart, leading for well-being. Now, in light of COVID-19, in light of lockdown, there's been a lot of change that's been going on. We've been now returning slowly back to work, and there's this new norm that we're in right now. So I'm very excited to welcome Marita Harrold, CEO of Yellow Tree, who's going to look at how, as a leader or manager, you all play a pivotal role in fostering the well-being of your team, and how you play a key role in successfully integrating your team members back into this new normal. I know from experience, it has been challenging getting back into this new normal, coming to the office, working from the office, resuming this other different life than what we have experienced during the last 4 or 5 months. So without further ado, I will leave you in the very capable, experienced hands of Marita. Now, if you do have any questions, please post them in the chat box. We will be having a question and answer session at the end, where Marita will go through all the questions and answers with you all. Enjoy this session. Thank you for attending, and over to you, Marita.
Thank you very much, Fazila, and lovely to be here with you all today. I work closely with ACCA in the Middle East, and it's a real privilege to meet virtually you as the members of the organization in the Middle East. I would like to reiterate what Fazila said around the chat. Please, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. We have questions and answers at the end of the session. But if something pops up conversationally throughout, I would love to hear what you've got to say on that. And we can, if I can address it at a time in the webinar, I will do. A little about myself. I have worked in corporate life for most of my time in the Middle East. 18 years of that was with Emirates. And through my time in corporate life, I also developed, I suppose, my wellness or well-being CV because I was interested in how to make myself better and the impact that these practices could have on my performance at work. And what we have seen, and in my life as well, but I was better at looking after that than I was at work. What I have seen in the last number of months is there has been a huge surge in people want to understand how they work and how others work and how we can support well-being. So today we're looking at leading at well-being, and as Fazila said, this will be around how you support your teams, but it's also related to you. So whilst I have put an emphasis on leading your team and well-being with your team, this also applies to you as an individual. And it is phenomenal to see so many people tuned in to listen to something around their well-being for the evening. Now, what I'm going to do is just start with a context of work for us at the moment. And this is a pre-COVID graphic. There are none for where we are at the moment. But in terms of the world of work, what has happened from the steam age right through to where we are at the moment is we have become ultra connected, even more so since March, and the degree of complexity in our work environment has increased as a result of that connectedness. So I recall 20 years ago in my corporate life on that computing screen that I could still turn off when I left in the evening, and I had space for practices that allowed me to rest and recover. That has changed, and with that, the World Health Organization tells us that at the moment burnout related to how complex and connected we are to the world of work is the new disease of our times. So we've got to figure out for ourselves how we work with that connectedness so that we can be the best that we can be, perform at work, but also protect ourselves and our sense of well-being and our health. Now, at the moment, on top of that complexity, we've got what's almost like a perfect storm of considerations. And when you think about this in terms of your team as well coming back to work. Not only have we that complexity and connectedness at work, we have the physical impacts of the actual virus itself and the changes that it has made to our environment. With that, there have come with that acute mental health issues that either the illness itself has brought with it, or the fear, the anxiety, or the isolation has contributed to, or maybe even caused. And I see at the moment some people have chosen to go back into work because they live on their own, and that isolation has been something that they have struggled with. You will be aware that there has been incredible financial loss that people and companies are dealing with. And with that, it's impacting our job market in that people who are still in the workplace are dealing with, and will for a long while, the lingering damage of job loss, and there are people that have been directly impacted. So when you look at a team that you are leading and working with, we are ultra connected all of the time. And there's a fear and uncertainty that underlies all of that. There's a physical component and there's a financial component. So it's really important that you're aware, particularly how your leadership style can support people through this and lessen some of those anxieties, or maybe even exacerbate it. So we're going to look at different leadership styles and how they impact aspects of our well-being. What we're seeing in corporates, and it's been really, like I say, interesting, but very encouraging, that there's a change in personal behavior as we recognize our need to be healthy and to improve our immune system. So those personal behaviors, people have become conscious of them and they're working with their own personal behaviors. Particularly around nutrition, there's been more interest around the functionality of food. So what is the science of food? And if I eat this food, what does it do in my body and how it can support my immunity? And we've run many nutrition workshops for corporates. We're seeing that as well as individuals doing more to prioritize their health, companies are doing this in a multitude of different ways that they haven't done before. And, you know, this time last year, I'm sure ACCA would not have run a webinar such as this as a matter of course, but we're now saying, look, if you want people to perform, we need to look at different ways that we can support people and our members. And we really have seen that, you know, the foosball table thing, the kitchen stocked with fruit is not enough to support people if you don't have more substantial measures in place. And a lot of those elements that we had in place around well-being in the workplace were high touch and social initiatives. And now we're looking at other initiatives that support maybe not so much the physical side of it, but also the mental and emotional side of well-being in an organization. Now, I've been using some words interchangeably, and these are, I'm just going to give you some definitions so that you can distinguish between the use of the words and where I have put them in and how you use them after this. Health, the World Health Organization defines health as the absence of disease. So we're talking physical or mental health, that we have an absence of dis-ease in our bodies or maybe mentally. Well-being is a state in which we're thriving. So we are the best that we can be. So I've got this sense that everything is working the way it should, it's interrelated, and that I am really good in myself. So we're talking more here about improving rather than an absence of. And in corporates, we use the word wellness around the activities that people do. So I do a wellness activity, and that wellness activity will contribute to my sense of well-being. Well-being is an inner state. It's intangible. One of the ways, some of the ways that we recognize it, particularly in the workplace, is around the types of relationships that we have with people, how we're connected to our work, how we achieve, and how we have conflict or less conflict. So a lot of the time we recognize the absence of well-being rather than the presence of well-being, but it is an internal state, and the activities that we do, the wellness activities in corporates contribute to creating a sense of well-being and an environment where people can thrive. And I like to use this model. I've put the reference at the bottom for you, if you want to do some more reading around it. But when we look at this, the biopsychosocial model is a really useful model to look at when you're looking at well-being for your team. So we've got the psychological aspects, the biological aspects, and the social aspects of well-being and their intersection. And if one of them is out of balance, we notice it in our overall sense of well-being and our ability to thrive. So when you are looking at your team, not only should you look around some of the more traditional biological aspects that we have looked at in wellness programs and supporting the well-being of our team, but also the psychological components of it and the social components of it. And that has been really highlighted in the last number of months, how that social component impacts our overall well-being and our sense of connectedness. And connected to that is the body system that I think most of us speak about. We talk about stress, and it's your autonomic nervous system, but we only speak about it in a particular context. So what I want to do is take you through what happens in the body when there is stress, how this is related to our well-being, and then we will connect it later to what you do in your leadership role, how it affects the balance and can affect the balance of this. So our autonomic nervous system has, it's not within our control. It controls the things in your body like breathing, digestion. It will control responses to your external environment. And it has two branches. One is the sympathetic branch. And this is when people talk about stress, they're referring to. It's the one that they recognize. So it's fight or flight or freeze. So when we are threatened by something, and there's so much in our environment that we perceive as a threat at the moment, that it activates our sympathetic nervous system. So people are living with anxiety, uncertainty. What will it look like when I go back to work? Am I going back? Do I have a job? What does the future look like? And what it does is it puts our body into a sympathetic state, or a state of either fight or flight, where people are ready and prepared for what is threatening them, or freeze, that they don't know how to react to it. But with all systems in our body, there is a balance, a check and a balance. And the balance in the autonomic nervous system is around rest and digest. And a lot of our wellness activities are targeted towards rest and digest. And some of the tips and tricks that we will give you will be around this area. But our body the stress is good, and our body is designed to have a stress response. But part of that design is that we also, so when it goes in, when it activates sympathetic, it also should then rest afterwards, and there's different things that happen in your body. The chronic stress that we see employees, we see ourselves experience, is when we stay in the sympathetic phase for too long, and our body is not allowed to come back into into balance. And when you're in sympathetic all the time, we recognize this as what's called chronic stress, that you're not coming back from it. So stress response is good as long as you have the balance in there. It helps our performance. But if we're not moving it into rest and digest, it then becomes harmful in our physical body. And the interesting thing about this is there doesn't actually have to be a real threat. It can be a perceived threat. So a lot of what we're seeing and dealing with at the moment is people are worried about something that hasn't happened and possibly could happen. But your body doesn't know that that's not a reality. So your body reacts to it anyway. So as a leader, being able to create as much clarity as you can and as much certainty. There's not a lot of that, but the clarity and certainty is actually quite important for moving people out of sympathetic into parasympathetic, and that people's systems can adjust. Because when you are stressed, and I'll pop these up there, when you are what we call stressed in sympathetic, these are the changes that occur in your body, and these are the changes that cause the disease that we are familiar with, the stress-related diseases that we are familiar with. And what's happening is it's taking everything in your body into a state of high alert. So you're using different systems. For example, your muscles tense, and you've got increased blood flow, which affects your blood pressure. Everything about your senses sharpen to where you perceive the threat. And that is, you know, we can use this to perform, but if you stay in that state over a long period of time, that's what causes damage in your body. So when you put yourself back into parasympathetic, and we have techniques around breathing and mindset, physical activity that will bring you back into parasympathetic, what happens is the reverse. Your breathing slows down, your heart rate slows down. This puts you in coherence with your brain activity. So your heart and your brain are connected, and if with your breathing you can slow your heart rate down, you go into coherence with your brain activity, and you engage decision-making processes that are not there if you are constantly in sympathetic mode. The system, digestion is one of the things that is affected by sympathetic or by stress, because the blood has gone elsewhere. It's not focused on digestion. It's not essential for survival. So it diverts blood flow away, and that's why you see digestive issues with people who are stressed. So really important that you understand what happens in your body, in anybody's body, when we're in these states, and the importance and the intentionality of being able to bring it back into a place where we can rest and digest, so that people can take their focus away from the threat, and in a workplace focus on what you want to achieve at work, and also that you can focus on problem solving, and that it allows creativity and possibility to come into decision-making processes. What happens with chronic stress, what happens is that if we don't go back into rest and digest, we stay in a state of resistance, and the resistance brings the exhaustion. And you will recognize the outward symptoms of that. The word that we hear a lot is called burnout. And if you look at stress versus performance in the workplace, too much of stress, too little of stress is problematic. And if we can manage stress well, it can improve our performance. So it's understanding what are the techniques that I can employ to manage that balance. And we should really, if it was an ideal world, be in the rest and digest for about 90% of the time. I think currently we're in sympathetic a lot closer to 70, 80% of the time, with some of the issues that are happening around us. And it's a normal human reaction, but there are things that you can do to manage it. And there are things that you can do to use it for good, rather than let it control what is happening. for you as a manager, I'm just going to take you through 4 types of stress that you encounter in the workplace, or that you will have to manage in the workplace. And understanding where the source of stress is coming from in your team allows you to say, this is the effort I need to direct so that that person can come back into that state of rest and digest. And I'll take you through each of them with some tools. We'll just touch on them, but with some tools to consider when you address each type of stress. And with these, they can be chronic. They can be so that it goes on over a period of time. It may be that it is acute, that it is for a shorter period of time, or it may be related to a particular episode. So, you know, the same solutions don't apply to every stressful situation. In some cases, you can actually, if you employ the wrong response to it, you can make the situation worse. So looking at the first one, and I'm going to put the first one in there because time stress until March, when we ran this training, was always the stress that people said, this is the one I experience most. And it hasn't gone away. But what has happened is that other stressors have crept in there as things that people are experiencing. And time stress is stress that you experience concerning time. And the tools around this are tools that we train in corporate training: time and energy management and prioritization. So with time and energy management, it's where you apply your energy to best effects and how you prioritize what needs to be done. That manages the stress response, and you may be very familiar with those tools to manage time stress. I remember running a workshop with the ACCA team, and we actually had really great fun around the prioritization piece, and it makes a big difference. But then you have got something that is situational stress, and I'm hearing more of this now, that we have stress you experience around a situation that you have no control over. So emergency or conflict related or outside your comfort zone. And when you see this with your team or experience it for yourself, the tools that are available. The first one is really just around awareness of what has triggered that feeling, and asking if that is true, because a lot of what we feel, just because we feel it, doesn't make it a truth. We'll first experience an emotion or a feeling in our body, and there will be a thought. So the awareness of what triggers that. What is your thought around it? And that discussion is a very useful one to have with a team member. And then bringing it back to what I can control and what I can influence, and not trying to perfect circumstance, because that actually causes some more stress. Conflict resolution skills, a lot of the time we wade in and we so what happens with a lot of the anxiety is how you will see it in your team and manifest in its team is that there may be conflict in relationships. The stress tends to manifest itself in how we deal with people. So understanding how to resolve a conflict is really useful in managing situational stress. With anticipatory stress, and my example for this before March was always around making a presentation, but obviously that has changed. But it's stress you experience concerning the future, and that can be very specific, or it can be a vague dread. And I think a lot of people are experiencing these interchangeably to say, what does my future look like? Do I have a job? What will it be like when I go to the workplace? So you've got a lot of anticipatory stress around what's happening in your team at the moment. And some of the tools that will help you manage, and I can give Fazila and Helen links to resources and to people that you can speak to support this if it's something that you want to explore further. Meditation, your ability to focus, is very powerful, particularly around breath work, because your breath work can bring your body, and breath is the one system of your body that happens outside your control, but that you can also control. So bringing your breath within your control will regulate your heartbeat, and then it will regulate your brain waves and engage executive functions of your brain to plan and to resolve. So meditation is very powerful. Positive visualization also plays a part there. So if you're looking at saying, what could the future look like? You can actually visualize what that looks like in a positive manner, and then wind it back and say, what do I put into place to make that happen? And the planning and confidence building were quite interesting. With a team member, if you've got somebody that has a vague dread and is overwhelmed by something that may or may not happen, breaking a task down into something that is achievable within 5 to 10 minutes for them, and this relates to a particular leadership style, helps them achieve, and it has to be something you know that person can achieve. That person achieves it. It engages your reward system, so there is a sense of accomplishment, which is one of the things that is necessary for our psychological achievement, our psychological well-being, and it also re-engages the part of your brain that says, okay, I can make a plan. So when you get somebody who is stressed, or yourself, either specific or vague, break it down to a first step of something that is 5 to 10 minutes that is achievable, and then there's a cascade in your body around what happens in your stress response. And encounter stress, it's stress that it revolves around either certain groups of people, groups that are in distress, or contact overload. And we have seen a lot of encounter stress in the news in health professionals that have had contact overload with a very stressful situation. You may experience it with people going back into the workplace, and it's around a certain situation. So how do you counteract encounter stress? And again, it is going back to the skills of self-awareness and self-regulation. And around a lot of the time, our self-talk is very critical here, and how we then deal with the people that we interact with. So when you see somebody that's in your team, or if you're experiencing your stress yourself, identify where that source of the stress is coming from, and then say, okay, this is something that I can employ that will help alleviate some of that stress to move somebody to action. And this is very useful when you're working with a team of people. You see different responses to circumstances. So we have a circumstance that is in the world at the moment, but people are perceiving that through very different lenses, and being able to say, okay, what is the source of that for you? And then help them in a way that moves them towards action. Now, when you're going back to rebuilding, there are some things that you do need to consider. And I think Fazila used a lot of these words at the very beginning. There may be, for a lot of people, a default position that a workplace is not a safe place to be. We have procedures that tell us when you go here, you do this. So many people in an elevator, so we have actually said, with everything that we have put in place to support people, that your workplace may not be a safe place to be. And psychologically, people are coming out of managing mode. So for a number of months, people have been managing, and we're now saying, okay, this is what this is what we look like now. We're moving into another normal, a next normal, whatever we may call that, but we're moving out of managing mode. So that high state of alert that we were in, And we were all in managing mode together is changing. So some people may still live there, and there will be some people that are coming out of it, and they will experience fear and uncertainty in different ways as we adjust to the normal. Some people have no issue with it, it's great. Other people, it brings anxiety. For other people, it brings a lot of stress with it. And as a manager and a leader, you're a failure to address the anxieties and the stress and the source of the stress can quite possibly lead to that conflict where you've got anger or demotivation. And look, when we're threatened, one of the things that happens is we focus on our survival. We're not interested in work. We're interested in how we deal with the threat. So as a manager, understanding and recognizing what people are going through, what you are going through, and dealing with that as best you can at the moment and creating some sort of clarity and certainty can help avoid the potential conflicts, the demotivation, and the disconnecting from what is happening. There's one more there that really, and there was a headline in, I think it was the Gulf News last Thursday, a very unhelpful headline that said companies are ignoring company goals and focusing on health and well-being. And in actual fact, focusing on well-being and education is your primary challenge towards achieving goals. So it's not that we're throwing goals out of the window and say, let's focus on well-being. When people are in a state where they're stressed, they can't contribute to your goals. So if you want to achieve well-being and well-being education is your primary challenge now, so that we can get people back to a state of parasympathetic dominance, rest and digest, and that they can focus on something that is outside their survival. A lot of this happens at an unconscious level. So people may not be aware that this is happening or this is what's motivating. They may not even be aware of what's causing the sense of certainty and dread. So it is a challenge for you leading a team. Particularly, you know, our deadlines haven't gone away. We have been called on to deliver more with less. So putting well-being and that well-being education center of what you do is critical for your team goals to be achieved and your company goals to be achieved. This is very quickly looking a little bit dated, but I decided to keep it in here because there are still some people living in it. When we have a crisis, there are 3 psychological phases to it. And the first one was like that overproductivity that we saw at the very beginning of our lockdown. And there was an urgency. I got more done than I ever have done. We've got shared clear goals. But as that time went on that we were at home, we had a regression, and the future is uncertain, and there is a lack of purpose. People get tired, irritable, and less productive. I was speaking with a friend of mine the other day, and he said, oh, you know, everybody, and that's where they were. I can't be bothered going to the gym. We don't know what's going to happen. It's all out of kilter. And along with that, you also then have people who have already moved past that stage. And they're beginning to reorient themselves and revisit goals, expectations, and roles. And they're looking at moving beyond getting by. So all of those are normal reactions. But with the people that you have in your team, you're going to find that there will still be people between 2 and 3, and you have people saying, okay, this is great, I'm reoriented, this is what's happening, and you still have people that have that loss of sense of purpose, and they get tired and they're irritable and they're less productive. And it's not linear, so we live between them all. Some days I'm great at the stage 3, some days I have gone back into stage 2. So be aware that when you have team members coming in, they will fit into one of these and they will move between it. And it's important to be able to recognize it and to recognize that that is a normal response to something that is not a normal situation. So Our current challenges, just very quickly, I think we've been through them, but just to put it there, we're moving from regression to rebuilding. We have to have an awareness of people, their emotions and their struggles as a leader. But we also have to have an awareness of ourselves and a kindness to ourselves, because that is, you know, not everything is going to work the way we always expected it to be. We have got to create a sense of psychological safety for our team, that they can speak up to express their concerns without anybody trivializing it. And that will very much come down to your role and how you manage people there. And that people will look to us to provide social support and interaction as well. So looking at well-being in your team, these are some of your, it is a situation, and there may be challenges for you dealing with that as well. And you know, people have different communication styles. My experience of your profession is that I see a lot of the analytical in terms of communication styles, where I want to know what it will look like and understand what is the next step and what the process looks like. It's not, it is a generalization. And for you, your role in supporting people as much as you can by creating clarity is really important for people who like information. Others are not so fussed. They say, I can deal with what's today, and they don't worry about tomorrow. So in terms of work, what I would say to you is start thinking about the well-being, psychological well-being of your team around 5 areas. And this model is from the father of positive psychology, a gentleman called Dr. Martin Seligman. And he does a lot of work around hope and optimism as well. And what you're looking at is positive emotion, relationships, engagement, meaning, and achievement. And I will map a leadership style to those for you. But when you're working with your team, this is in life, but really applicable to what you do as a leader in creating an environment where people can thrive. These are the 5 components that are important for you to be able to distinguish and what you are impacting. With engagement, when you read Dr. Seligman's work, we're talking about our engaging with a task that we can connect to. A meaning, he speaks about it in a bigger relationship, but we'll speak about it to the world, but we'll speak about it in terms of the vision and goal of the company. An achievement in terms of that I've got tasks that or goals that actually challenge me a little bit, that I have to struggle a little bit to achieve, but that then when I do, this achievement has a real impact on getting you back into parasympathetic dominance, because you get, when you achieve something, you get a hit of dopamine, and it deals with the stress hormone. It pushes it back down a little bit. So achievement is a great way of managing a stress response. It is part of your team. And where this is really important is, we'll forget the individual and job competencies and requirements now, but your leadership style has a 70% impact on how people experience the organization, and how they experience the organization has a 30% impact on performance. So essentially, the style that you employ now around well-being with people can impact performance. So you will change their experience of what it is like to go back to work and reintegrate, but you also have a direct impact on performance. And the numbers are that big. So when you choose a leadership style, I'll just put these up here very quickly. The top one is the one I want to focus on. There is situations that you face. So the situation is where your well-being and the well-being education is your priority at the moment. One of the things that your leadership style needs to reflect is that situation that you're facing. And also, it is influenced, and I'll put it at the top one, the experience of your employees and your employees' strengths. So when you're looking at well-being and you're choosing a style to use to address a certain situation, we're looking at the experience of employees at the moment around their well-being. So when we map this, of these leadership styles, you'll find them in different models in different ways. The top one, directive, is a short-term style. Visionary is a long-term style. Affiliative, where we're creating harmony, can be a long-term or short-term style. Getting people to generate new ideas is long-term. Pace setting is short-term. And coaching is long-term professional development. Now, with these styles, if you, and I'm going to bring up the model of well-being again, if you wanted to impact, for example, relationships, and that you want to prioritize that aspect of well-being, sorry, I think there might have been a network issue. I got a lovely pink box telling me there was an issue there. But if you want to prioritize the aspect of well-being, you may relationships in well-being, you may choose an affiliative style, which you may not have done in the past. So I want to prioritize harmony so that I can promote the relationship aspect of well-being within my team. And it is something to consider as we go back in, that you've got harmony and you've got people working together. With achievement, if somebody is overwhelmed and they're thinking, how do I approach this? Pace setting, where you show somebody how to do it, is a good leadership style to choose. So if somebody is overwhelmed in your team by what is happening, and with goals that you have to do and resources that you have, and there's a conflict, creating a sense of achievement for that person, like I say, will engage parasympathetic dominance, engage the reward centers for that person, and make that person feel better in terms of what is happening psychologically. So, saying to somebody, let me show you how to do it and let me help you break that down, and then leave them with it, is very effective in terms of managing that situation. Creating meaning for people, and this comes to you as a leader. How do I create meaning? Where do I connect where people are, particularly in a virtual world? How do I connect them to the team? And how do I connect them to the organization and the organization's goals at the moment? One of the nicest stories I've heard around this is someone saying, I now see how it is connected in the long run, so I am going to do this better. And it will be for you to help build that connection so that people get meaning of what they're doing, maybe isolated from others and maybe in distributed teams. So I'm going to just go back a slide. Oh, sorry, the wrong way back. When you're looking at the leadership style to choose, I know we've been trained in terms of using these leadership styles in other situations. I want you to think about well-being and that employee experience at the moment, and what you can do for that person's stress level and their experience in the team by just saying, in this situation, whilst I normally maybe wouldn't choose this style, for example, affiliative, I am going to choose it now so that there is harmony in the team, that we create positive emotions and that we create positive relationships. And then when I have that, we can actually progress towards goals. But your choice of leadership style will have, if you say to somebody with coaching who is completely overwhelmed and they can't see out of it at all, you are going to contribute to that sense of overwhelm, which will cause stress for them. So you may just say, okay, I'm going to switch out this style into a pace setting style, and then I'll move back to coaching. It has an impact on our stress levels and where we see the future. Participative is a very good style at the moment to work with uncertainty, because you're asking for people to contribute. They're building commitment. They feel like they belong. It reduces a threat level, and then it also brings with it that you're generating new ideas. But looking at that threat level, can I involve people in the decision-making process? Do they feel like they belong? This addresses the uncertainty that is part of our work situation at the moment. I am going to, just in terms of your team climate, and team climate is how we experience the organization. Do I like it here? Do I not? Some people will in different teams, other people may not. And there are three things that you can do that impact how people experience well-being. And they would be around the first one, clarity. It is the thing that builds trust. I understand that you may not be able to create clarity maybe long term for people, but understanding where people where I fit into this and what is expected of me reduces that anxiety and reduces the stress response. You're moving people back. They say, okay, this is where I belong, and you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, and then all those internal invisible effects of stress change. So that has a direct impact on it. The second one is standards. So it kicks in that sense of achievement, that you set challenging goals for people, but make sure that they can achieve them, and then support them in they doing it. Because again, if you overwhelm somebody, your stress response kicks in, and you can't see the wood from the trees, to use a saying that I'm sure Helen is smiling about there in the background. And then the reward mechanism, that we have achieved something, that we recognize the achievements of the team and activate that reward system for our team members and for ourselves, so that people can move forward with what you want them to do. So your leadership style it has a direct impact on what people experience in your team, and what they experience, we process it through a lens, and we internalize it, and that internalization, however we do that, can cause an awful lot of stress for some people. Other people maybe not so. So be aware of what you're working with there. Now, I'm going to very quickly, because I'm on the time for questions, but just in terms of supporting your team, I'm going to finish with psychological safety. And it is a belief that if somebody speaks up, that they won't be humiliated or signaled out for speaking up, and particularly around fear and uncertainty. It is for you to create an atmosphere where the members of your team can express those fears, and that you see them as valid. Remember, they are experiencing it. It is valid for them. It may not be a truth, but there is a fear there for them. So, you know, how do you create an environment where people can speak up with questions and concerns that they may have? And when we're building that trust, one of the most important things you can do is show that person you are thinking about them, and it is not about you. So the orientation is around, I have a focus on that person and what that person is experiencing, rather than how I think it should be. And you know, with this concept of orientation, when you're looking at it in a team, people are going through a whole range of emotions. And what is happening may not be about their work, it may not be about you as a leader. They could be tired, they could be hungry, they haven't slept, there's a financial situation. So an awareness of that, an understanding of it, and a compassion for it, and then recognizing the type of stress that's experiencing and what you can best do to help that individual through what is causing that stress. The people that are back in workplaces, and are comfortable doing this have, from my experience, had well-being prioritized. Leaders that have been focused on them and their well-being, and they have moved quickly through to the third stage, and they're re-energized. So you do have a lot of influence over how that can happen with people in the workplace. Now that is 4:55. Fazila or Helen, I'm not sure who's popping in here now. Do you have questions you want to ask, or have questions come in there?
Yes, fabulous session so far. Thank you very much. We have a huge amount of questions. It seems it's a really hot topic at the minute. So I'm just going to head straight into them. Guys, we'll try and answer as many as we possibly can. One of the first ones that I do resonate with myself is, how can a working mother manage her work and lifestyle along with family during this pandemic, and also managing her team's stress levels?
Okay. So full disclosure, I'm not a mother, and I live alone. So what I can tell you from speaking with people, but it's not my personal experience, and I am probably the least authority on it. Where I have seen working mothers put themselves under pressure has been in relation to their own expectations of themselves. And when this is not perfect, or it's not done the way I would normally do it. And there is an expectation that when you dig a little, has been created by themselves. So when you're feeling under stress and you're looking where the stress is coming from, who's creating it is a really good question to start with. Who's creating the expectation and the stress and the pressure? And sometimes you will find that the answer is you're doing that yourself, and it's not your manager, it's not your team. And it is driven from the fact that you want to do best for everyone. So that is a really important question to ask. And if it's trying to balance it in terms of work, have a conversation. I think a lot of teams are set up around a workday that may not work for you. So have a conversation with your workplace about how you could structure that time to look different, so it allows you a little bit more flexibility around the competing demands. And then there are some things that maybe you can look at and say, right now it's not a priority. And these are the things that I will prioritize, and I don't have to do everything. But ask yourself the question, who's creating the stress? And a lot of the time we find that we're creating it for ourselves and are not aware of that.
I think that goes back to the age-old saying, ask the man in the mirror, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the man in the mirror usually has something to say in the reflection.
Exactly. The next question is around trigger points and identifying them. They think that they've identified that their stress points come from timelines and deadlines. They're unrealistic timelines, they're unrealistic deadlines, which causes a huge amount of stress, which impacts on this person's health, that their manager doesn't seem to recognise that these key indicators. How do they raise that upper level to make sure that both of them, he's delivering, but also his manager understands what's happening down below?
Yeah, and a lot of the time what you will find with that is when you have the open conversation that there's conflicting expectations, or that maybe your manager doesn't or is not aware of what you're experiencing. So I would always encourage a very open conversation around that. And with that one, usually without specifically speaking to you, usually what happens is that we're viewing the whole picture. And that action of breaking something down into achievable tasks it is very powerful in terms of how you manage it. So I would have that conversation with your manager to say, this is the feeling that's coming with it. This is how I want to break it down. Are you okay that it is delivered like this? And that clarity is important. Now, that's a conversation upwards with your manager, and be aware that as leaders and managers yourself, there will be people looking at you doing this, and you haven't intentionally caused the stress around the timelines. So first of all, have the conversation, and the breaking it down and the chunking it, that ability to say what needs to be done, prioritizing, making it into smaller tasks will lessen the stress on your body. The way you think about it, it is achievable. So the way that you, but not altogether. So the way you think about it and how you frame it, we could also maybe look at reframing that, but without knowing the particular circumstances, I can't and I wouldn't say.
So moving on to team stress, it's kind of the same conversation. A manager has a team member that openly shouts to the roof around, I'm just interpreting here, around their stress levels. And then you have a complete polar opposite who doesn't say anything to your face but says it to the team. How do you suggest that this manager deals with such polar different staff members to manage them effectively whilst causing the manager less stress? And obviously they're time sensitive as well.
Okay, so I won't say what anybody else should be doing, because that is something that is generally from your point of view rather than what that other person is experiencing. I think in this case at the moment, you really have to deal with each individual and each situation on an individual and personal basis, so that you get the team to work together. And look at ways where you can create harmony, so that maybe I will let go of this in favor of the harmony. So there's around the affiliative leadership style. Some of it, doesn't resonate with me personally, because we create harmony at the expense of maybe other things. But absolutely, in this case, how do you create that harmony in your team? And maybe you've got to let something else go to do that, and that's okay. And then you individually address the needs of other people. Compassion, I mean, the ability to see it from somebody else's point of view. Everybody has a very unique experience, and it's very real for them. So an absolute compassion and empathy for the other person in the team is of paramount now, so that we can get back to a way that we function together again.
Okay, perfect. I think there's two more questions. How have you observed that leadership styles have changed over the past few months, if one compares it before the pandemic and the current situation?
I have actually, so I see it in a very specific and narrow lens. I have seen that there has been a lot of concern about how we support people, and the conversations I've had with leaders are around what can I do to support. Leaders have become more aware of their own leadership style and how they're choosing it, and how that works with people who are distributed maybe all over the region, maybe all over the world. So there has been a curiosity about what I can do to support people, and what can I do, what style can I use to support. Specific behaviors have been around having conversations around the emotional and psychological issues. Issues is a big word, but the domain of psychological and emotional that maybe people didn't consider before.
Okay, perfect. And the last one is, as a manager, how can I ensure my team does not get too stressed out when they're working at home? I think this is, but they want to ensure that the objectives are achieved as well. So obviously they're outside of the office. They can't physically see them unless they're on a call. And and they've got reduced hours, but they've still got the same targets, and they just want to ensure the stress levels whilst ensuring the achievements.
Okay, so the role has changed in that people are spending, the leader's role or team leader's role has changed in terms of when you're virtual, you have to spend a lot more time connected with your team and speaking with your team. So there has to be some process in which you connect with everybody individually. I would see what their individual circumstances are like, and I would discuss what kind of a routine they have in place, particularly around disconnecting. Our bodies need rest, and we need to switch off, so that rest process and sleep process is really important for our bodies in terms of when you look at achieving goals. So how are people disconnecting, and what are you doing that makes them feel maybe they're not able to disconnect? So having that conversation and being in constant contact with them is really important, and having very specific routines for different people and understanding what works for them and working with them. So for example, if somebody has a toddler, there may have to be a different way of working with that person versus maybe me that doesn't have that pressure. The other thing is on your team meetings, I like a role called the listener of hearts. So we're not just listening for we don't assign somebody just to take minutes, but you actually assign somebody to pay attention to the digital body language. Are people connecting? Are they quiet? And bringing that to your attention afterwards. You don't have to do it all on your own, so that you can check in with that person, and maybe watching the screens, because it's a different interaction virtually. Watching the faces on the screen, so that people, so someone can come back to you and say, these are some of the observations that I have made in this environment. So you can't just transfer the process that you had in a physical office into a virtual environment. There has to be a lot more in terms of conversation. You give that person permission to switch off. So whatever that may look like for the individual, a lot of the time they're striving to please you and to the company goals. So how does that work for each individual, and how do you give people permission to, if you like?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. I think it's clear from today's session that it's a really hot topic. People do care about their teams and their own well-being. They know that the recent pandemic has impacted them in more ways than one. I think a key understanding that I've taken away from this is about the flexible approach, not one size fits everybody. So thank you for that. On behalf of ACCA, we're delighted to have brought this session to you all, and thank you, Marita, so much. We will share this presentation and the video on demand prior to this session, and the contact details for you, Marita, are in there if anybody wishes to reach out to you directly. And we still hope everybody stays safe, stays healthy, and have a good afternoon. Thank you so much, Marita.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody else. Stay safe, stay well, and please reach out. I'm very happy to speak to anybody who may want to address something specifically.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.